Hello and welcome to the next episode of OSPAs One-on-One. As you are aware, this is in continuation to our maiden OSPAs India Awards, which were held virtually in the month of August 2020 in association with BW Business World, media partners as BW Security World, BW Police, and BW Defense, and Security Link India. So today we have someone who is a CISO and head of security risk and business continuity. She's working towards supporting, enabling, and protecting the financial sector in Norway. Last but not the least, she's an OSPAS winner for the year 2019. Allow me to welcome Monica Verma.
Rajiv, thank you for having me over today. Lovely to be here.
Thank you, Monica. Before we start, why don't you give your introduction yourself and what are you doing and what is your initiative about Monica Talk Cyber?
Sure. Just a few words about myself. Hello, everybody. My name is Monica. I've been working in the security industry now almost, I think, 14, 15 years. I started my journey as a hacker, and today I'm working, as you said, as a leader or head of security risk and business continuity, work as a CISO. I've been working mostly in the finance sector, but I've also worked a bit in the health sector. So these are probably the two industries I know the best and I work with. And my role really is, and what I've really focused on in the last years, to help businesses understand what security requirements they have, how to build strategy for security for their business, tailored to their organization, their risk profile, based on the evolving threat landscape and what kind of digitalization is happening in their organization and so on. So my role has been very much, even before I was a CISO, in whatever roles I've mostly focused on how I can tie the security aspect that I'm working with to enable the organization's goals and what the purpose that they have. And even though I come from a very technical background, I've worked a lot with businesses over the last probably decade, and that's what I've been doing. In my private time, or actually also not just private time, but also part of my actually role and a contribution to the community, I do a lot of nonprofit stuff. So I'm sitting on the board of Cloud Security Alliance Norway. I'm also on the board of Women in Cybersecurity Norway. So here are the two very good initiatives that are to my heart, based on enabling and helping organizations move to cloud, but also helping women in our industry to support them and their talents and their experience. But I recently started this summer with my own nonprofit podcast and initiatives as well. So I've launched my website called monicatalkcyber.com, where I have a lot of presentations, the talks that I do, I blog all the important things that I feel are useful and try to provide value to the community. As well as I've started my own podcast show, which is We Talk Cyber. It's available on my website, but also anywhere you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple or Spotify. So I bring on different guests from security, risk, and privacy community. And what's interesting is that it's not very technical. I try to cater to a broader audience.
Wonderful, wonderful, Monica. So many things that you're doing. I do not know how we'll be able to finish our talk in a short span of time, but so before we move forward, I'm already requesting you to find some more time in one of the next episodes that you can find time for us. But tell us, Monica, how come cybersecurity? How did you get into this industry, and what is it that is that drives you on and on?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting because my interest started actually at 10 years old. I saw the cockpit flying to the States for the very first time of my life. At 10-year-old, as a child, I was actually asked by the pilot if I wanted to see a cockpit, and obviously I was very intrigued. And I was more excited. I was very excited to actually just go into the cockpit and maybe look at the view and how the pilot see. But what really attracted me was not the view from the window, but actually the technology in there. And that's what fascinated me quite a lot. And my first question as a child was like, oh my God, how is this thing up in the air with all these switches in technology. How do pilots even know? I mean, mostly now it's on autopilot as well, but still, nonetheless, it's a massive immense of technology behind it, right? For us to be able to fly in that way. So I got very curious, and I, as a result, took computer science as one of my majors in school. And I already started learning programming very early on. What interested me into security, or what was a segue to security, was actually one was programming. I learned that you could hack in a way, or you could do things with the programs that it's not intended to do, which we call as hacking today. It at that time it was not really that popular, but then obviously I learned over the time that you can use this hacking for good and for bad. So I obviously thought I should do the good part. That was something that intrigued me, and I started in the cybersecurity industry as an ethical hacker, so to say. That's how my journey started. And later on, one of the questions that I got during hacking as well, when I was very technical, was from business leaders that time. Why should I care? I don't care about these. Like, they didn't really understand these security flaws and what it meant for them. That's when I got interested into the risk aspect of it and what it means for businesses and how do we understand cyber risk. And this is what I do today. So what really motivates me is the impact that security has on everyday life, towards the society, towards different sectors, towards critical infrastructure, towards businesses. It's now no longer just like a security issue. It can be a systemic risk that can bring down a whole sector, or health services, or I don't know, critical essential services of society for that matter. And that, to help them, is what really drives me every day.
Wonderful. So you have actually covered a long distance in just a matter of 15 years, as you mentioned. But I think you actually started, as you said, you started your journey towards where you are when what, 36,000 feet above the sea level, at the age of 10. Wonderful.
In
Um,
a way, when I didn't know, that's right.
yeah. um, uh, uh, Monica, what challenges are we seeing within the security industries, amidst this increasing digitization, and especially now with this syndemic uncertainties? I mean, what do you think the challenges are?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we are still seeing the basic difficulties with basic security hygiene that we have had, I don't know, the last 2 3 decades.
Yeah.
We have not really, I mean, we're getting better at it. We're talking a lot about, okay, let's at least have basic security hygiene in place. That the security good practices, or the minimum one should have. But there's still so many organizations that struggle even with that, even with the low hanging fruits. So that struggle is still there. I mean, we have the technology and the technical debt. We have legacy. So we have those issues still ongoing, even though we have been trying, and we still need to work on them. That's one part of it. But then add to that the massive digitalization. Everybody is just using technologies, and increasing digitalization in their industry. That's one. Then add to that all this convergence that's happening between the physical, the digital, and the biological world. I mean, we're putting in heart pacemakers and chips and RFIDs and all of these things in our bodies, and there is like blurry lines between blurred lines now anymore between the physical, biological, and the digital world, without really understanding the risks and the consequences. And then also when we talk about IT, OT, IoT, IIoT, Industry 4.0, I don't know, there's so many buzzwords and everything just converges into one, and everything is overlapping in a way. So as I said, one of the biggest challenges I see is that we are not focusing maybe so much so on understanding what kind of impact that security have on a higher level for the society. As I said, it's a systemic risk, right? The next financial crisis, the next collapse of the health sector can be due to a cyber attack, not necessarily due to just because some issues with the Goldman Sachs or something. But so those challenges are obviously there. We still have to take care of the basic hygiene in place, but then we also need to understand and adapt very quickly to these changing digitalizations that are happening and how these technologies affect us. And I think the biggest two biggest things that I still see are our biggest problems. One, strategy. People are working with security. A lot of the organizations are spending money in investment without really understanding what the security strategy is or should be. Because if you're here today, you want to go somewhere tomorrow, it's very important to have a strategy and a plan in place. Number two, people go into cloud, people use IoT, people embed different technology aspects into their lives without really doing any kind of pre-risk assessment or regular risk assessments, and that can have a big impact as well. So maybe these are the things that I believe are we still need to focus and work on.
Yes, thank you, Monica. You initially said that you have also worked in the health sector, and my question in the extension of the previous one is that how do you see the challenges in cyber security among, while this pandemic uncertainties, and we, one of the panelists in our world earlier one-on-one said that healthcare or health sector is the new IT. What is your take?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is actually, in a way, it's quite true, because health sector has been doing now massive digitalization that we have seen over the last couple of years, especially on this pandemic. We have seen an increase and a growth of cyber attackers, cyber offenders attacking the health sector. Very recently, the cybersecurity infrastructure, the CISA, the cybersecurity, no, I can't remember the full name of that, but the CISA, the security cybersecurity agency from the US, the FBI, and the US Department of Health and Public Services, I think, if I remember correctly, HHS,
Right.
they came out with a new report recently with tangible data and confirmed data that actually they've seen a massive increase of cyber attacks towards the US health sector and health services. Although that report is about the US health system, but this is not limited just US. I mean, we're
Yeah.
seeing this globally. We have seen the recent attack on the Dusseldorf University Hospital, where the patient had to be taken to another hospital and died because she could not get the surgery on time. If it's confirmed that her death was because of the delay, then this will actually be the first really confirmed case of public or human death due to cyber attack. So we're really seeing the consequences of it. It's no longer just, okay, my system stops working, or my website is down for a couple of hours, I've lost a lot of business. Here we're talking about loss of a human being, a
Yeah.
loss of lives, and we will see more of them, because I just mentioned we are seeing a more blurred lines between the physical, digital, and the biological world. What happens with Industry 4.0, with robotics, with the heart pacemakers, with the RFID tags in it, and also the aspect of privacy. What kind
Mhm.
of data? We use our mobiles every day. We have almost no control of what kind of data is being read, gathered, processed, and sold on our behalf. We don't have the transparency yet. Imagine, this data already is very critical, but imagine now my heart rate
Yeah.
and my pulse information, everything is being hacked. And very recently, what also has been happening in the health sector specifically is when the patient records get leaked, these cyber hackers are basically contacting the patients directly for ransom.
Mm.
And that's a whole different level of blackmail, because now it's not that organizations who have still an understanding will not be like, okay, you know what, we're not going to pay ransom, okay, fine. Although many organizations are still also want to do that, even though it's not right. But when it comes to individual people, they don't have the understanding. What can they do in these circumstances? It's very difficult questions.
Yeah, Monica, I'm kind of speechless of the example that you are giving. I think, as I said in the beginning of beginning of our call, that we would like to have you one more time to discuss, and I think we should have one more session whenever you get time, just especially on cyber security in the healthcare sector. I mean, we touched upon this briefly earlier in one of the OSPAs webinar, but I think it's much more to it, especially when you were saying it's cybersecurity is effect, it could be a matter of life and death.
Mm,
All right. So
absolutely.
yeah. So Monica, when we talk about cybersecurity, why does diversity and inclusion matter? I mean, what 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 can we do to have better diversity and inclusion for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a topic that has been now raised, obviously, a lot in our industry and also in general outside of our industry. But if you look at the aspect of whole diversity and inclusion and equality, we have been really fighting this fight for decades and centuries, no matter. I mean, talk about the first time women got the right to vote. Talk about the first time women of color got the right to vote. Talk the first time women in many countries got the possibility to even drive a car. I mean, this is an ongoing struggle, and we have been seeing this. What I usually say when it comes to diversity and inclusion is two important things. One, it's not just about diversity in what we see, but also diversity in what we hear. We already have studies that show that diversity and inclusion basically increase the productivity of a company or an organization, and that is rightly so, because with different backgrounds, thinking process, thoughts and understandings and opinions and experiences and racial backgrounds, you have more possibility of opening your eyes and ideas to opinions, and we need that change in an ever evolving landscape that we have in front of us. I mean, everything is evolving so fast. If our mindset doesn't evolve that fast, then it's very difficult to keep up. That's one. And the second thing that I say with the diversity inclusion part is it has to be sustainable. With the example that I gave, we've been fighting this fight for many, many decades and centuries. And we need to make sure that we are not talking only in terms of when the problems are happening or coming up, but let's start with kids, let's start with children. I mean, we have these STEM programs for young talents and professionals, where we encourage and motivate girls to be in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, which is good. We need that. We need young professionals and talent in our industry, but we need to start even earlier. We need to start with parents talking to their kids independent of gender. What dreams do you have? How can we encourage you? And most importantly, letting them make mistakes. We all need to actually starting embracing failures and mistakes, and I think we need to be more open to it.
Yes, very well said, Monica. Now, these are the things perhaps the people in the security industry, perhaps in the cybersecurity domain, understand. But how easy or difficult it is for you or for anybody, I mean, I also belong to the same industry, but I want to hear from you that how do we communicate effectively from the people who are not from the industry, and what is it differently we have to do? Like you first said that cyber hygiene, and I think most of us do not understand this basic cyber hygiene from the importance of having, keep changing your Wi-Fi password. So how do we communicate to people, and what is it that it should be more effective?
Well, the first thing we need to really understand, every security person, whether technical, non-technical, doesn't matter. The first thing you need to really understand, the person that you're talking to, or the organization that you're talking to, or the group that you're talking to, what drives them? What is their purpose? What is their goal? If you don't understand that, you can be talking whatever you want to talk, it will not make an impact. Because
Yeah.
for you to be effectively able to communicate that and be able to talk, because people usually just go and say, you know what, talk in business terms, talk in their language. But what does that even actually mean? What are the actually tangible things you can do to talk in somebody's language? To start talking in somebody's language, no matter what it is, you need to first listen. You need to understand where they come from, what their purpose is. So, for an organization, what are their goals? Why their business is, what's the purpose behind their business? For individuals, like teenagers who are on social media, why they're doing it, what motivates them, how you can talk to them in a way that affects their life. I mean, talking about Wi-Fi and password, just as an example, if or talking about social media, if you're talking to a teenager, you will have to be able to talk to and say, okay, does it, how would you feel if your personal photos, especially let's say sensitive photos, sensitive data, got into hand of somebody that would blackmail you there, or could take advantage of it? So we need to be able to understand something that matters to them. And just talking about changing Wi-Fi password, it doesn't really help in that sense, because these are measures that you need to take. And that's also one thing I talk about security. The goal of security is not to secure, It's to achieve a higher purpose, a bigger goal. And security is a measure to basically achieving that goal. And when you talk about measures, you need to first talk about why you're doing it and what you're doing it. And that will basically help you talk to people outside. And one of the things is also that you need to have this mindset. I talk a lot. Majority of my day is spent talking to non-security people. I absolutely love it. I embrace it. And I feel if you change that mindset, it will help you make a much fun conversation. It is challenging at times. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying it's all roses and fantastic,
Yeah.
but at least helps me embrace it.
So I hear you saying that it's better to make them understand the consequences of not keeping the cyber hygiene rather than just telling them to do it.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay. Monica, what is the scope of improvement in information security industry, and what are your thoughts and some tips that you want to give to the audience?
I mean, there's a lot obviously we can do, and one of the challenges obviously that we have is that we are always one step behind the attackers, right? I mean, they're always one step ahead of us. So how do we? It's kind of like this arms race. How can we be better at it? The it's not a level play field. That's the problem because we have limited resources, limited budget, limited time. They don't. So it's already like a rigged game in a way, in a sense.
Yeah.
So what can we do is, well, three important elements: the why, the what, and the how.
Mhm.
Start with the why. Why are you doing this security initiative, measures, whatever project you're doing? Why is this important for your target audience, whether it's organization, business, people? The purpose of your security goals should be aligned to the goals of your audience. That's the why. And understanding, even though overall purpose of security might be to say, okay, uh, in a very general term, we can say security is about basically managing the risks in time while the business operation continue to function as much as possible. But it can obviously be a bit more nuanced to it based on who your audience is. So that's what you need to figure out first, the why. Second question is the what. So you need to have a strategy in place. As I mentioned before, and I want to repeat that again, you're here today, you want to go somewhere tomorrow. You need to have a strategy, what that entails. How do you fulfill that gap? Then the third part is the how. Have a very clear plan to operationalize that strategy. And that basically, and one of the biggest mistakes that probably people do that doesn't help is they make a plan that is so rigid that this exactly how it's supposed to be. And I usually suggest maybe a two-pronged approach. Start with a short-term plan and a long-term plan. Make two separate plans, one a short-term one and one a long-term one. The short-term one is to immediately fix certain things in the very near future, 3 month to 6 month. And then while you're already making that plan, already make a long-term plan as well for 3 years, let's say a roadmap kind of, if you may, that builds on that, but is flexible enough to um, change it or adapt it along the way. Because as you say, the technology is evolving, the threats are evolving, your risk profile is evolving. Your strategy needs to be adjusted and aligned to your risk profile and not anybody else's. So obviously, listen to what the good practices are, listen to what the best advices are with regards to it, but still keep in mind your strategy and your plan will be yours for your organization, for your business, and it might be different than others, and that's okay.
Monica, thank you so much. It is so lovely to speak to you, and I go back quite learned today. And uh, I hope that we can talk on and on. But to all the listeners and to all the audience, I think we can hear more from Monica on monicatalkscyber.com, and we'll have the details shared just after the video. And you can, Monica, on your behalf, can I request them to connect to your website and ask questions, and to you, and you
Absolutely.
answer?
Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have other social media, but on LinkedIn, I'm very much there. I post very often, regularly about everything that's happening on my website. I post about my new episodes that's coming out on the podcast. And if you like, just please subscribe and follow me, and you will get all the information. You can also send me email through either messages directly through LinkedIn, or through my website. I'd be happy to help and answer. Absolutely.
Thank you, Monica, once again for coming to this one-on-one OSPAs episode. And we look forward to have you very soon next time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
So that was Monica Verma from Norway with us, and keep tuned in. We'll come up with the next guest, next influencer, next security expert very soon. Thank you so much.